Growing tomatoes in a community garden won't fix climate change, but it just might help you fix your relationship with your inner self. Find out how next on Global Perspectives.
This is Global Perspectives with Pulitzer Prize-winning commentator John Bercia.
Welcome to Global Perspectives. What do food and the environment have in common with spirituality? More than you might think, says Fred Bahnsen, director of the Food, Faith, and Religious Leadership Initiative at Wake Forest University. He's also the author of a new book, Soil and Sacrament. Welcome to the show, Fred.
Thanks, John.
Tell us about this combination of soil and sacrament. It's not your usual book title.
Yeah, so soil and sacrament, what I was going for there is really an attempt to talk about the holistic life, to talk about soil, all of the things related to the land and our bodies and how we eat, and to talk about sacrament, to talk about our spiritual life, and to talk about the ways that we encounter God through growing food and through sharing meals together.
And how did this idea come to you? Was it through experience, or did you just wake up one morning and say, wow?
Yeah, no, there was no aha moment. It was really my journey began, in the book, I trace it back to an experience I had working in Chiapas, Mexico. I worked with a group of Mayan coffee farmers down in Chiapas, and I had just finished divinity school. This was the year 2000. I was planning to do a PhD in theological ethics, and I went to work with this group of Mayan coffee farmers and really got derailed from the whole academic life in a good way. I learned from them the beauty of growing food and living in close relationship with the land, and really just fell in love with their whole agrarian way of life. And at the time, I was really on this sort of this spiritual quest to sort of, I was looking for a calling. I was looking for a vocation. And it was in Chiapas that I discerned this vocation to feed people. And I had no idea how to do that. All my agricultural verbs were pretty vague. Plant, till, reap. And I had no idea what that meant, but I was drawn to it nonetheless. And I returned from Chiapas, returned from that experience with a strong urge to learn how to feed people. And that was sort of bound up in my religious calling. And so I learned how to grow food. I went to work on a permaculture farm in North Carolina, Sustenance Farm it was called. And as I like to say, I learned just enough to be dangerous. You know, I learned just enough of the food growing skills that I needed to launch out on my own. My wife and I ended up buying a small farm and learning even more. And then in 2005, I helped to start a community garden for a small Methodist church in a place called Cedar Grove, North Carolina. And that's where I really leaned into my vocation with everything I had. I helped start this 5-acre garden. We had about 65 member families. A lot of low-income families came to our garden. And the basic urge, or the basic ethos of the garden, I think, was to make sure that everyone could have access to really good, nutritious, healthy, organic food. Food that, if folks couldn't afford an organic head of lettuce at Whole Foods, at least they could come and get it from the local community garden. And so I worked at this garden for 4 years as the director, and it was a really intense and really rewarding 4 years of my life. I worked there from 2005 to 2009. And so in working there at that garden, I began to intimate, I began to have a suspicion that the way we experience God, the way we experience community, all of those things are bound up in the life of the soil. and in working with the soil, in learning how to grow food and feeding people and sitting down and sharing a meal with your neighbors, with people you don't know, you experience God in those acts, in those practices. And so I wanted to write about that blend of the religious life, the spiritual life with the life of the soil. And so I started thinking, maybe I should write a book about Anathoth, about this garden that I helped to start. And the more I thought about it, I realized that I needed to tell the larger story of what was happening around the country, which is this urge among people of faith to reconnect with the land. And as I see it, it's a pattern that's repeating itself over and over around the country. Churches are starting community gardens, synagogues are starting community-supported agriculture projects, little tiny Methodist churches are starting farmers markets in their backyard, or, their parking lot. There's a kind of return to the land that's happening, a return to food and sharing food together. And so I set out in 2011 to sort of document these different communities.
And you mentioned some very different faiths. So this is obviously
Right.
something that happens across religions.
Absolutely. The first place, well, I should say, I went to 4 different communities, one for each season. And each visit coincided with a liturgical holiday. And so I began my journey in Advent, which is the beginning of the Christian year. And I went to visit a group of Catholic monks, a group of Trappist monks. And if any of your listeners have read Thomas Merton, famous spiritual writer of the 20th century who's now passed on, Thomas Merton was a Trappist monk. And I went to visit one of their monasteries in South Carolina, a place called Mepkin Abbey. And these monks are mostly men in their 70s and 80s, and they spend, I'd say, about 4 hours of their day praying, whether it's getting up at 3 a.m. for vigils or the multiple services throughout the day on up to Compline at 7:30 at night. And in between their hours of prayer, they grow mushrooms in order to sustain themselves. That's their livelihood. And so I was really fascinated by their life of prayer and work. And in fact, the Benedictine tradition of which they're a part is famous for its emphasis on ora et labora, prayer and work, and how those two shape you into a healthy, whole human being. And so I went to visit these guys and spent about a week with them during Advent. Got up every morning at 3 to pray vigils, and then went out to work in the mushroom shed all morning. And I talked with one of the young monks, Brother Dismas. He was about 23. And I asked him, I said, Brother Dismas, how did you end up here at the monastery? And he said, well, I went to study academic theology at Notre Dame for 4 years. And he said, my faith was all from here up. He said, I came to the monastery because I wanted to learn to put the faith in my hands. And so he realized that part of his religious vocation was manual labor. So I learned about their life of prayer and work there during the week I spent. And in the spring and Eastertide, I went to visit a community called the Lord's Acre, which is a community garden in Fairview, North Carolina. And on this half an acre, they grow 9 tons of organic produce for the local food pantry. And they just give it all away. And food pantries, as you may know, are often short of fresh produce, and especially good organic produce. And so the Lord's Acre supplies that need there in Fairview. And it's a community-driven effort. A lot of people come. And the garden manager there, Susan Sides, I love how she describes their work. She says, by growing food for others, we are making love visible. We're making love visible. In the summer, I went to visit a Pentecostal farm up in the Skagit Valley of Washington. And this is a place called Tierra Nueva, which is New Earth. And I visited this farm and coffee roasting business during the Feast of Pentecost in June. And this was a really interesting community in that they take in folks who have had problems with addiction, people who are coming out of gangs, folks who've been in migrant camps and who need a place to go. They sort of take in people from the margins of society, you might say. And they give them jobs. And at this place, Tierra Nueva, they have a really amazing coffee project where they buy fair trade beans from Honduran growers. And they have folks who have checkered pasts who are now roasting the coffee. Their chief coffee roaster was a former crystal meth cook back before he sort of turned his life around. And he's now the chief coffee roaster. So he's sort of redirecting those skills toward better ends.
And you tried the coffee, I'm gathering.
I drink it every day.
Uh-huh.
I'm a subscriber to their coffee mail order business now. It's called Underground Coffee, and you can order it. It's great stuff. And finally, I went to this Jewish community, a Jewish farm up in Connecticut, and this is a place called Adamah Farm, and they train Jewish 20-somethings in the arts of organic agriculture, and they incorporate Jewish spirituality into that. And so each day begins with prayer and perhaps a study of a certain text from Torah. And then they'll go out and work on the organic farm or the goat herd or the goat dairy, making chev cheese, that kind of thing. And so they're learning through this 3-month program at Adamah how to become farmers and how to incorporate that into their Jewish spirituality.
How did you pick these communities, or did you have a sense of what was out there and you made inquiries and those were the four you settled on?
That was the hard part, was narrowing it down. Because as I was doing research for this book over a couple year period, there were just far too many communities to visit. And again, it speaks to how many different faith communities are starting these food projects, these land-based agrarian food projects. So I studied several dozen of these places at varying levels, and had to narrow it down to 4. And that's partly why I chose 3 Christian and 1 Jewish community, is that being a Christian myself, I was also looking at this as a kind of spiritual pilgrimage for myself. I had to narrow it down, and so that was an easy way I could narrow it down some, was choosing places who at least shared the same scriptural texts that I did. Mm-hmm. But there's all kinds of faith communities who are starting projects like this, and it's really exciting.
When you talk about the broader issue of the environment and climate change, the big picture, and then this is really the small, or maybe even the smallest part of the picture. How does that fit into the conversation? Growing tomatoes in a community garden is not going to fix climate change.
Right. Yeah, growing tomatoes in a community garden will not fix climate change in and of itself, but I think it trains you to see the planet as a garden. Mm-hmm. I think that's the great power of gardening and of learning how to grow some of your own food, is that it teaches you basic life processes, how our bodies are nourished, how the soil is nourished. It teaches you that everything is connected. John Muir famously said that once you try to pull anything out by itself, you'll find it hitched to everything else in the universe. And that's really true in an ecosystemic sense, that everything is connected. And so, the fertilizer runoff in this river over here is affecting this gulf down here with dead zones. The corn and soy we're growing over there is creating obesity and health problems over here. The carbon we emit over here is affecting the whole garden. And so if we think of the earth as a garden and use that metaphor, it gets us thinking in different ways, and it gets us looking at the earth not as this big warehouse of raw materials that we get to go and take stuff from, but it teaches us that it's a place that needs our care, as a garden does. So growing those tomatoes will help with climate change in the long run, I think, because it trains us in these new patterns of thinking. But having been trained in the garden, we then need to go out and advocate for the kind of broad-scale policy changes that need to happen to stop climate change.
Explain how all of this worked for you personally. Are you one of those people who really enjoys getting his hands in the soil, or not necessarily? And do you have a favorite fruit or vegetable that you like to grow?
I do. I used to hate gardening as a teenager. My mom had me rototill her garden every year, and that's probably why I don't use a rototiller now. They're smelly and loud, and they jostle your brain. So I garden all with hand tools now. But my love of gardening, I didn't grow up with it. I grew up a skier and a climber in Montana. To me, the outdoors were just a great big playground and a great place to just be out in nature. But I had no interest in growing food or any of that stuff. My interest really came about spending time with those Mayan coffee farmers and seeing the dignity of their way of life and learning some of the basic skills of growing food from them. It's really where I caught the bug, I'd say. In terms of a vegetable I like growing, there's so many. I think one thing I'll say, and that I said in the book, is that my interest in vegetables really stops once the plant is at full size. It's like once I've gotten it to that point, I've almost lost interest. So my wife is always teasing me about how I never harvest stuff. She's always the one who harvests because once a kale plant has reached its maturity, I've sort of moved on to the next thing. I love that whole process of taking a plant from a tiny little seed and watching those little first wings, those little cotyledons sprout, and then the whole process of caring for it and bringing it to full fruition. It's a deeply rewarding activity.
Where do you feel all of this is going in terms of a national or global movement? Do you feel that there are enough people participating in these community experiences that it really will make a significant difference over time, as you were suggesting?
Yeah, I think it's an incredibly hopeful time. I think all of these little community efforts like the ones I've been describing, whether it's a community garden or community-supported agriculture where consumers pay a share of the farm and then get an exchange of produce every week. A lot of organic farms are doing that. Or whether it's the increase of farmers markets around the country. I mean, farmers markets are climbing at 20% a year or something crazy like that. There's exponential growth. And so I think it's all indicative of people wanting a deeper connection with their food and wanting a deeper connection with the community that results from that. It's been said that when you go to the grocery store, or it's been said that when you go to a farmer's market, you have something like 5 times more conversations with strangers than you do at a grocery store. And so these kinds of food, these new ways of growing and sharing food are also giving us those kind of community connections that we crave. And we live such so many of us live such isolated lives that going to a community garden or to a farmer's market and growing food with your neighbor, it's fulfilling on so many different levels. And so I think there's that kind of grassroots effort that's happening, but that's then resulting in this new consciousness around food at a societal level that, hey, we need some big changes with the Farm Bill. We need to stop growing so much corn and soy. We need to get away from fossil fuel intensive agriculture. all of those kinds of ideas, I think, are coming out of this grassroots food movement and are then creating those kind of policy changes that we need to see happen. So yeah, I think that will just continue to grow.
I think it's interesting that one of the ironies of our time is that we're more connected than ever, but so many of us, as you were saying, are leading lives that are more isolated than ever.
Right.
But your earlier point about how ultimately everything is connected means that that's an artificial arrangement. It can't last over time.
Yeah, I think many of us are finding ourselves over-connected in terms of screens and under-connected in terms of actual FaceTime. And so I think a number of people are hungering for that human interaction and that interaction with the soil, tangible connections. And in my book, that's really what I was trying to write about, was that this is a deeply human impulse to connect with the land and to connect with others, and that comes out of a deep hunger we all have. And so I don't think screens are a viable substitute for that. I think I use a computer, obviously, and I use email, but I think the amount of time we spend on screens it's taking us away from these necessary human and earth-based relationships.
Mm-hmm. I like the contrast that you drew between the farmer's market and the supermarket. The culture of the supermarket is almost one in which you don't want to talk to other people. You don't even dare talk to them.
It's kind of lifeless. It's kind of fluorescent and devoid of those kind of easy human interactions that farmers markets create.
Do you see this happening as much in other countries as it's happening in the United States? Is this really a global phenomenon?
I think it is, but I think because the United States, because we are several generations removed from the land, we have more of a disconnect with our food than places in, say, Italy or Argentina or wherever. I mean, a lot of other countries around the world still have some kind of connection with their food in a way that we've lost. And so I think there's probably the biggest movement, just in terms of population and such here in the U.S. because of how far we've been removed from the land. But sure, it's happening in other countries, and Europe has a pretty strong consumer consciousness about food. I mean, they've banned GMOs in Europe. You can't get GMOs, in those countries, and so genetically modified organisms. And other countries have banned GMOs, and that's indicative of their consciousness that those things aren't so good for us.
I have to ask, will we ever find you in a supermarket buying food?
I still do get a few staples here and there, but whenever I can, we grow most of our own vegetables. My cousin-in-law raises meat, and so we buy all of our meat from him and his wife. We trade and barter with neighbors for other things. So it's kind of an adventure, it's kind of an adventure to eat with the seasons and to not always have tomatoes in January, which here they grow in January, but in North Carolina they don't. And so, I pretty much just eat tomatoes when they come into season. And it's part of the lifestyle. It's a fun way to live.
Great. Well, thank you, Fred Bahnsen, for joining us today.
Thank you, John.
And thank you. For Global Perspectives, I'm John Bercia, and we'll see you next time.